more of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. Game 2 tonight, Rangers and Montreal Canadiens in the Bell Center, 609-919-9200. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. The Rangers look to go up 2-0 as they got the Game 1 victory by a final score of 2-0. A phenomenal goalie matchup between Price and Henrik Lundqvist. And now joining us is someone that covers hockey for Yahoo and covered the Rangers for a long time. That's Jim Cerny, who's kind enough to hop on board with us right now. Jim, a pleasant Good Friday. Thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Zach. Looking forward to Game 2. That Game 1, I know I tweeted it out during the game. Man, if we get the 21 periods, 7 games worth of that intensity and great back-and-forth action, I'd sign up for that.
No question. I would sign up for it as well, though even though I'm a Ranger fan, I may want to see that go a little bit quicker. But as a fan aspect, it definitely is fun to see. And in Game 1, you saw 2 great goalies, and you saw the Rangers just get that early break with the Tanner Glass goal. It seems like that's what this series is going to be from here on out. Just great goalie play, and then whichever team gets the break in that game is going to come out victorious.
Yeah, you look at the different series in the playoffs here, and really, I can't think of a series that might be tighter. Where the two teams are so equal at the end of the day than the Rangers and the Canadiens series. You might have given Carey Price the advantage in goal heading into this series based on Henrik Lundqvist's inconsistencies, but Henrik more than equals that out when he plays with the focus and the drive and that throwback performance he had in Game 1. But I think you're right. It's going to be who blinks first, who makes the critical mistake at the wrong time, which goalie is able to outduel the other one at an elite level, because that's what I expect throughout this series. I agree. I think you're going to see. I thought it was going to be a 7-game series no matter what, but I think you're going to see each and every game just be nip and tuck, and I don't see anybody running away from the other in any game in this series.
You know Hank better than almost anyone, covering him for so many years, and I wasn't really apprehensive at all with Hank going into this postseason. I know he's had an up-and-down year, but at this point, you just have to rely on him to be able to flip the switch, and that he was able to do in Game 1. With Lundqvist, this has been a bumpy season for him. How would you describe the season the King has had?
Hey, yeah, bumpy's a good word to say the least. It's clearly been the most inconsistent season of his career. The amount of goals that he allowed on clear open shots, things that, in his sleep he was denying in the past, were sneaking past him, certainly in the first half of the year. And he was really fighting himself. And then the team around him, I thought, tried to overcompensate. Henrik's bailed them out for so many years, and now they tried to return the favor, and that just compounded the problems. And then guys started getting in Henrik's way. Nick Holden, oh my gosh, how many times has he screened Henrik Lundqvist this year, just trying to overcompensate and make the big play in front of him to help Henrik out. And now I thought the second half of the season was less bumpy for him. Certainly, he had some down moments in the second half as well. But I thought he finished the season strong when he came back from the hip injury. And I knew that he could go to another level in the playoffs. But I must admit, even I was surprised how absolutely dialed in and just unreal he was in Game 1. He was that good because the Canadiens stormed the Rangers in that first period. And then in the second half of the second period. And Henrik was not only up to it, but he was superior to it. And the Rangers are going to need that, obviously, if they're going to go on a deep run here. But I just thought it was so important for Henrik and for his teammates to see that, oh, yeah, Henrik can go back up to that level that we've seen so many times before in the past, in particular in the playoffs. And listen, when the series started, I said, to me, Carey Price is the most important player in this series for either team. But Henrik Lundqvist was the biggest X factor. Which Henrik were we going to get? And if he continues to be the Henrik we saw in Game 1, I think the Rangers absolutely can and should win this series.
This is a good Ranger team. We know that when you have 102 points. I know they were fourth in the division, but that just shows how unreal this division has been this year. But we talk about the inconsistency with the goalie play in the regular season and then also the defense. This is a little bit of a different tune heading into this postseason, and that's why Game 1 was so encouraging. When you look at the defensive effort, and yes, the Canadiens did have some great shots, and the Kings just bailed out the Rangers, but what did you see defensively out of the Rangers 2 nights ago in Game 1?
Yeah, a couple of things other than, obviously Henrik's sterling performance that stood out to me were, one, I really liked the play of their defensemen. I thought the only defenseman that struggled was Nick Holden. 2 terribly egregious giveaways in which Henrik bailed him out on. But otherwise, I thought that the defense was good. I thought Girardi and McDonough got steamrolled a little bit first several shifts in the first period, and then I thought they settled in and played really well. McDonough had his normal rate of being their best defenseman. I thought Girardi, though, was very, very good. I thought Stahl was steady. I thought Brendan Smith was
very impressive.
I thought he had a terrific Game 1. His best game since coming over from Detroit. And I thought Brady Shea was fantastic, too. And, played a physical game, moved the puck quickly out of his own end, played with confidence, wasn't the moment wasn't too big for him. So that stood out to me, how well their defense played, their defense core. But what really stood out to me from the 18 skaters, so that's all the forwards and all the defensemen, was the Rangers' compete level was off the charts. And my biggest complaint about this team the last probably couple months, to be honest, 6 to 8 weeks or so, certainly the final quarter of the season, has been Rangers don't play 60 minutes. And it was killing them. Yeah, they would win some games just based on spurts of really strong play. But their compete level was not very good, I thought, the last 2 months. Their compete level was off the charts in Game 1. Now, so too was Montreal's, because I thought Montreal competed very well as well. But focusing on the Rangers, their compete level through all 4 lines and all 3 defense pairs was superlative. And to me, as much as certainly Henrik's play in goal, that was the difference in the Rangers Game 1 as opposed to what we saw down the stretch of the regular season.
Right out of the gate tonight, you would expect Montreal to be a desperate hockey team and really bring their A game, and they brought it in Game 1, and the Rangers survived that attack by Montreal, and the Rangers also survived the attack by Montreal later at the end of the first period when the Rangers got in some penalty trouble. Just tonight, how did the Rangers match that intensity level of the Canadiens that they're going to bring in the first period to maybe steal the first period from Montreal?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I guess you do it. You have to do it a little bit better than you did in Game 1, because again, Montreal, fired up. That building is unreal in Montreal, the Bell Center, and the fans really are, are like an extra player on the ice. And Montreal fed off that energy, and it was wave after wave of opportunity that they had early on against Henrik Lundqvist. Rangers are going to have to manage that a little bit better. Obviously, if Henrik can stand on his head, great, and you work your way through it. But I think what the Rangers want to do better tonight than they did in Game 1 is play tighter defensively in front of Henrik, establish their forecheck, establish their game, as opposed to be back on their heels and react to what Montreal did. Or what Montreal will do, like happened in Game 1. I think that's the big difference for the Rangers. Again, if they can get that first goal and get one pretty early like they did in Game 1, that certainly changes the atmosphere there too. Montreal gets the first goal. Doesn't mean Montreal's going to win the game, but it does set a totally different tone because that place will be bananas. Rangers will be back on their heels, and Montreal's going to be feeding off that. So whoever scores the first goal, it's no guarantee that they win, but certainly from a Ranger point of view, if they can establish their game and score that first goal again, it's going to cause a little trouble there for the Canadiens. So I think those are a couple of keys that the Rangers want. Play better defensively to start the game, and if you can get that first goal, could make a world of difference.
Jim Cerny with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Last time these two teams met up in the playoffs, we all know what happened. The Rangers went on to the Stanley Cup final, and you had the Price injury, but the Rangers were able to steal those first two games on the road in a building that usually they don't play too well in. But when you look at this Rangers run, Jim, and you know it better than anybody, this has been a team that they have gone to the limit. They have gone to 7-game series. Why do you think? Is it just because it's a Stanley Cup playoffs and it's so tough to win 2 in a row? But why does this Ranger team seem to struggle to kind of string together consecutive wins in the postseason?
Yeah, it's really a great question, especially when you have such a great goaltender like Henrik Lundqvist. You would think that you'd be able to string together 2-3 wins, in a playoff series. And the Rangers they've done it, but a lot of times when they have done that,
been down big.
It's been because their backs were against the wall. They were down 3-1 to the Penguins in 2014. And
Capitals.
Down to the Capitals 3-1 in 2015. They had to win 3 games in a row. It really is a great question. You really wonder if that's going to happen again, that there's just going to be that little bit of a letdown here in Game 2. You got one on the road, you're able to get the split, and then you go home 1-1. You have to wonder if that's what's going to happen again, because we've seen it so many times in the past with a lot of these same core players, Kreider and Nash and Girardi and Stahl and McDonough and Stepan and Zuccarello, these guys that have been there that been the core of this team for 4 or 5 years now, have been at the core of those teams that, win one, lose one in the playoffs, despite all the great success that they have been able to achieve in the postseason. So, yes, I don't have an answer for it, but it is a part of the history of this core, and it's going to be very interesting to see, if that continues tonight. Because make no bones about it, if the Rangers win tonight, they're winning this series. They're not going to blow a 2-0 lead, I don't think, to Montreal. I don't know that Montreal's got enough firepower and enough there to come back from 0-2 down after losing 2 on their home ice. This one goes 1-1, and then, all bets are off. We're in the type series that I expect that would go 7 games.
Jim, when you talk about this core, and they've been through a lot, they have more postseason experience than any team, and I know they haven't got that Stanley Cup yet, but they did lose a big piece in Derek Brassard, and he was a tremendous postseason player for the Rangers. Out of those guys that have been through some of these runs, who do you really look to kind of replace that goal production in the postseason? Because watching the Rangers the last few years, it seemed like Brassard always had that clutch goal for the Rangers in the playoffs.
Yeah, great point. That's why he was called Big Game Brass, because he would come up big. And in his tenure with the Rangers after he was acquired, he led the Rangers in points cumulatively in postseason scoring all those years, 13, 14, 15, and 16 when you add them all together. So he's a major loss come playoff time. So, who steps up into that role? Well, first, look to the guy that they traded for, Mika Zibanejad. He's a little bit of an X factor here, a little bit of an unknown. We don't know, because he doesn't have that big postseason track record. We don't know how he's going to react to playing on the big stage in the big city, with the New York Rangers in the playoffs. I liked what I saw out of Zibanejad in Game 1. I thought he was very involved. I thought he was very physical. I'm very curious now to see how he comes back in Game 2. Does he build on that? Nope. I got one under my belt. Went pretty well. Now let's put up some points here. Or does the physical play, maybe, because that's not quite his game, does that maybe knock him down a peg here in Game 2? So he's a key guy to watch for sure tonight and throughout the series. But of the guys that do have the experience, who needs to step up and be that big goal scorer offensively? And of course, you have to look at Chris Kreider, I think. Kreider didn't quite generate as much offensively as I would have liked to have seen in Game 1. There were too many stretches that I didn't see Chris Kreider. I didn't notice Chris Kreider out there. He needs to be a difference maker, I think, offensively. And I think we go back to this every single year. Rick Nash does so many great things for this team as a two-way player in the postseason. So many of them that fly under the radar. But the one thing that he doesn't do enough of is put the puck in the back of the net. If the Rangers are going to make a run, he needs to step up as an offensive force, or else there may not be a long run. So Kreider and Nash are the two guys that I really focus on here offensively. And as a wild card, keep an eye on Jimmy Vesey. I don't think he's afraid of the big moment here, despite being a rookie.
Now, when we had Micheletti on the other day, he said the same thing when answering this question. He did point to Jimmy Vesey and talked about his presence in previous experiences, obviously not in the NHL level. Wrapping up with Jim Cerny, who joins us right now. The coaching job of Alain Vigneault, I love to throw bouquets at him for the job that he's done with this Rangers hockey team, but you saw it in Game 1. I got that face-off moved, which he was imploring the referees to do, and it went in his favor. And then also the decision to start Tanner Glass in that round 1 game, opening up against the Montreal Canadiens. AV had a really good start to the postseason.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, you have two really great coaches here going head-to-head. I have the utmost respect for Alain Vigneault and Claude Julien. And you know what? This one's a little personal for AV, too. He'll never get it out of his craw, maybe until he coaches a Stanley Cup winner, that he ended up losing to Julien in 2011 when his Canucks led the Bruins, Julien's Bruins, 3-2, and they ended up losing Game 6 and Game 7, and losing the lead in Game 7 too. So I don't think he'll ever lose that until he eventually coaches a Stanley Cup champion. So this is personal for him too. So not that he wouldn't be dialed in to this series and doing his best to win it, but he wants this one bad. There's no question about it. But I love watching great coaches match wits and the line combinations and lineup decisions and working the referees, and both of these guys are masters at all of that. Listen, the decision to go with Tanner Glass over Pavel Buchnevich, I thought all along that was going to be the decision. And, I could argue it either way, but I tended to agree that was the way to go. I don't know that you need, if the series goes 7, I'm not sure Tanner Glass plays every game. Maybe on home ice, maybe Buchnevich gets an opportunity in there. I'm not sure. But Tanner Glass, when you see the way Game 1 was played by both teams, but dictated by Montreal being a more physical team, and how the Rangers stood up to that and matched that, that's not just Tanner Glass. Obviously, it's the 18 skaters, and to be honest, Matt Zuccarello led the charge there with his feisty play. But when he's in the lineup, you're going to get that, and that fourth line is going to get you that. It takes on a decidedly different look when Pavel Buchnevich is out there. So clearly, AV read the situation right, at least for games 1 and 2 and how they were going to be played in Montreal.
Now, with Lundqvist, we all know the one thing missing from his resume is a Stanley Cup, and that bothers him more than anybody, and he came close a few years ago, and in the last few years, he's been deep into the postseason. It makes you wonder, with his age and how long he's been in the league, how many more years do you think Henrik Lundqvist can legitimately compete in the National Hockey League?
Yeah, listen, it's hard to say with the great ones. They defy they defy age and defy expectations, at every turn. And, it looked this year like Henrik was more mortal than he's ever looked before. And that was coming off, the first-round playoff ouster at the hands of the Penguins, in which Henrik didn't play great. The team didn't play great. Henrik was battling, injury as well. And, they were a mess. But you see Game 1, and now he's got to obviously carry that forward. But you see Game 1, and you say, boy, yeah, he truly is one of the greats. He plays at that level with that focus, that dialed in. Yeah, he can lead this team on a run. After this year, we'll see where they're at the end of this year. Obviously, Henrik will still be their number one, but then it becomes another year more difficult. It's another bigger challenge. He's going to have to defy even more odds next year, and then after next year, he's going to have to defy even more odds the following year. And he's under contract for all those years coming up. How many more years can he do it? Very, very difficult to say because this was a very rocky year for him. I think the ace in the hole is that Antti Raanta showed last year that he was a good backup. He showed this year that quite possibly he can take on a large, not quite possibly, but that he can take on a larger role and take some of that load and pressure off of Henrik in the regular season, because the goal has to be, and it was this year, and it needs to be in future years too, that just get in the playoffs, but make sure that Henrik is at the top of his game in the playoffs. That's when you need Henrik Lundqvist, which means Antti Raanta has got to play a bigger role in the regular season. Like he did this year, I think he'll have as big, if not a bigger role moving forward.
If you had to put a percentage on it, a number this year, and I know they're only up 1-0, and if they lost game one, no one's even asking this question, but if you had to put a percentage on them winning the Cup this year, what would that number be?
Oof, yeah, they're not one of my Cup favorites for sure. So many things need to go right. They're going to have to stay healthy. I'll backtrack. One of the first things did go right already. They got the crossover into the Atlantic Division. Now, that's no guarantee that they get out of the first round. It's no guarantee they make it to the conference final. But certainly that's the preferred path. So already you can check off, okay, one thing went right. Lundqvist, Girardi, Klein, who hasn't played yet, but will probably play at some point in the playoffs. A bunch of these guys were hurt for a while, but it meant that they were off the ice and they weren't grinding through games. And, Girardi looked so fresh and so good, I thought, in game one, and so did Henrik. So maybe they benefited from some of that. However, now they need to keep their core healthy. So, that's a big, big factor as well. So many things need to go your way. Henrik's got to continue to play like he did in game one. Is he capable of an 8-week stretch like that? That's a tremendous question that we don't know. Right now, I'd say odds are against it, and I'd say pretty heavily against it. I think Washington absolutely is the team to beat. But listen,
is this the year they cash in, though, Jim?
I don't think they make the run in 2014 either.
You're right.
Things fall into place sometimes, and they have to fall into place, for a team to make a long run.
Is this the year, and I know you like Washington, and everyone's going to like Washington because they have 118 points, and we've seen this narrative, though, before with Washington, and I know they got the win last night in overtime, but is this the year the Capitals finally get the Cup?
I think it is.
They're
last
deep.
year, I know they won the President's Trophy, and they were the popular pick, and I didn't pick them. I just, whether it was the history of the Capitals, the history of Barry Trotz in the postseason as a head coach, never being able to get past that second round with the Ovechkin, Backstrom core, Holtby, I just didn't see it happening, and it didn't happen. This year, I really, really firmly believe that they have the team, top to bottom. I think being the top regular season team last year and then losing in the playoffs in that second round, I think was actually good for them. They brought most of that team back. They added a couple pieces, including Kevin Shattenkirk at the trade deadline. And I like that team. And I think they're mentally fit for this now. I think as soon as they get past that second round, because I think they're going to win the first round in 5 games, even though Toronto gave them a little scare there, and they might continue to do so. But then Caps in 5 here. And I think the Caps are going to take Pittsburgh in the second round. And then I think once they get over that hump, finally get past that second round, beat the defending Cup champions, I think they're going to go and they're finally going to get it. They're finally going to get their Cup. That said, if they don't win the Cup this year, I don't know when they're ever going to win it, because that team's going to be a little bit broken up at the end of this year. They'll still have the core, but they're going to lose a lot of those important secondary pieces, because financially they're not going to be able to keep this team together.
Jim, great stuff. Really appreciate the insight. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you got it, Zach. Enjoy the game.
Thank you so much. There's Jim Cerny joining us on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. And that's all the time we have today. A lot of good hockey talk today. You heard from Jim Cerny. You heard from Dave Hackstall. And then we also squeezed in the NBA with Mitch Lawrence. So a lot to do when we come back over the weekend on a Monday. You got the Stanley Cup playoffs. You got all the baseball in play. And you also have the start of the NBA playoffs. But that is all the time we have for you today. This is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey, 920 a.m. in Bucks, Burlington, and Mercer counties, or worldwide on the web at 920thejersey.com. Have a safe weekend. Remember, if you drink this weekend, please do not drive. Make the safe decisions, and we'll see you back Monday at 4 right here on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. I'm Zach Gelb. Have a great weekend. You know the drill. Peace!